Hello, hello. Welcome to a Friday night edition of Illini Cast. Want to come on for you guys. It's been a little while. Austin, unfortunately, is a little busy. So, in his place, I've brought in Alex from Armchair Illini. Alex, how are we doing today?
Sonny, I'm doing great, man. I'm glad to finally be on the show. Big fan. Always tune in. I'm glad we finally got to work something out, and even if it was last minute, I appreciate you
Yeah.
having me.
No, I just figured there's a lot going on in the Illini world right now. And I miss the chat. If I'm going to be completely honest with you guys, one of my
Yeah,
favorite parts of doing this, obviously I do the Lockdown Illini thing, but that's just me going at it pre-recorded for a half hour. But I really kind of miss the community here and going back and forth with people's questions. And I can answer some questions myself, but you guys at Armchair Illini do such a good job with the content out there that I'm really glad that you're jumping on with me.
yeah, man. I appreciate that. I mean, likewise. I think you guys do such an amazing job of interacting with your fans, both here and with you on Lockdown Illini as well. And I know I'm a big part of that chat sometimes with making you guys laugh and get you guys off kilter, especially Austin. So hopefully someone can make one of us laugh, in the middle of a sentence.
No, we always have a good time. Where should we start? Let's start. We might as well start basketball. That's usually what the audience wants, and it looks like Kasparas has finally gotten a ranking from 24/7. He's top 50. What was it, like 36? Is that
Yeah,
correct?
yeah. I don't know off the top of my head, but I know he was at least up there, top 40. That was a really cool feature by 24/7, and he's starting to really gain some steam in terms of the hype.
Oh, definitely. I've called it the summer of Jakucionis. A month and a half, 2 months ago, none of us knew who he was, and now all of a sudden, we've been almost bombarded by his highlights. And there's not a single YouTube college basketball show out there that doesn't talk about Kasparas. And now I fear that we're getting to the point where it's kind of overdoing it. I feel like I'm kind of afraid that the expectations might be a little bit too high for this kid. But for now at least, it's a summer. You keep the summer vibes good. And so um, I'm just rolling with it. But what do you think? I think it's 36. Is that too
Yeah.
high or too low?
Um, it's hard to say whether it's too high or too low, but like you said with the hype, it's like we were all in on Igor Demon, and
Yeah.
talking about AJ Store, David Jones. You guys touched on it a bunch of times on here, but um, it seems like right after we lost out on Igor Demon, we were right on to KJ. I'm just gonna call him KJ for pronunciation purposes, but and now he's even receiving what it seems like more hype than Igor Demon. Like I haven't heard Igor Demon's name since he committed to BYU. So that's something. He's still 18 years old. I still think there's going to be an adjustment period. I don't think he's going to come in right away and set the world on fire. His highlights look great. Don't get me wrong. He's a great passer. He's a guy that can, he's got a lot of Andre Curbelo to him, and with the way he gets into the paint. Obviously, Curbelo was smaller. KJ's more of a 2-3, but the way he gets into the paint so easily, it's really cool to see. But also at the same time, he's a great passer, just like Curbelo was. And I think he's going to have some of those moments where, you got to live with the good and the bad with him. So I think there's going to be an adjustment period like Curbelo had. But once he gets going, once he gets used to both ends of the ball, I think he's going to be, outstanding, like Curbelo was his freshman year.
Yeah, Carbelo's one of the ultimate, what could have happened. I feel like when it comes to Illini lore, he's going to be a guy who, again, only played 2 years for us. Well, I guess like a year and a half, but he's going to be talked about. I feel like 10 years down the road. But yeah, I completely agree. Like Kasparas is one of those guys who, with it being summer and me needing things to do and coming up with content for the other channel, I've never watched so much under 18 basketball in my life. And again, I thought I was originally doing it just for work, but now like I just genuinely enjoy it. Like this morning, their or no, it was yesterday morning. They had their quarterfinal against Germany at like 5:30 in the morning, and so I woke up maybe a half hour into the game starting, And while I'm like brushing my teeth, I'm sitting there watching Eurobasket, FIBA under 18 basketball, and I'm like, this is just what my life is, and this is just again, it's just the excitement of Kasparas because we've got other guys who are obviously rated a little bit higher, but I just I think he's such an all around player that same with you, like. Igor was the original target, and he's the guy that we all got excited for. He was the one who was going to be the projected lottery pick. And at the time, it seemed like we had to settle for Kasparas. But now, all of a sudden, yeah, now all of a sudden we see Kasparas. I see him on mock drafts higher than Igor does. Is showing up. So, but again, I'm purposely being super positive now. I like the idea of a 6'6" big guy next to Colin Boswell. It looks like Brad Underwood is going to continue just try to have a lengthy team. When it comes to 36, though, I'm going to be honest. I think that's way too low.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to keep things tempered. But I think, at minimum, he should be maybe a top 20 guy. And that's me being very conservative. I want to say higher, but like what he's already shown me out there, and again, he's played against the top AAU teams here too, in the country, and he's done really well for himself. That's actually where I first got caught my glimpses of him on YouTube, and he held his own. We've all heard of the matchups he's had against when Barcelona and Real Madrid played each other, and Kasparas and Igor were going at it essentially one on one. Kasparas won pretty much every single game they had together. When it comes to the stat line. So I would put him at top 20. But again, I know I'm a little biased, but I feel like I'm literally trying to be anti-biased, and I've got him too low.
Right. I don't think there's 35 international players that are being talked about more than the guy, though. There's no way.
No.
And I think that just goes to the power of the Illini fan base, where we just dig so deep into things. And especially, like you said, at a time like this where we're kind of needing content. So I think a lot of his highlights too just stick out at you, but you got to watch the full games. I've done a little bit of that, and I'll try to get to it, in a thoughtful piece on the site. But um, there's moments where you're just like, okay, what is he doing there? I think decision making will be really important.
Yeah.
He takes some bad shots. He gets blown by on defense a couple times, but also sometimes he shows great potential on there because, like you said, he's 6'6", he's long, he's got great feel. But there's going to be an adjustment period. He's 18 years old. He's playing in America. I mean, not only did he just come on campus, but he went back to play FIBA, and now he's got to come back and readjust to everything again. I think it's a tough ask, but he's talented. I don't know if he'll hit the peak this year, but we always talk about that 2025 team and what that can be if everyone sticks together, if the band sticks together. This team could be really, really special. But I do encourage fans to watch both his highlights and his lowlights, because you'll kind of see, that there's going to be an adjustment period, and it'll kind of hold you back a little bit in terms of the hype that's been building on. And don't sleep on Kylan Boswell. I think
Just gonna
this
jump
is his
right.
third year. Like he's gonna be. I think he wants to get out of Champaign to go to the NBA as much as he loves coming back. Like, this was a basketball decision. This wasn't, I'm coming home, I'm gonna make an NIL deal in my hometown. This was a basketball decision for Kylan to get back on track, for Kylan to refocus and start fresh. The guy's a 5-star point guard, and it's his third year of college basketball. I think as much as we hype up Kasparas, I think Kylan is primed for, a great season. Both of them are, but I think we definitely have been kind of underselling Boswell because, he had a really rough end to the year, and then hyping up KJ because he's the shiny new toy that has kind of the flashy highlights, if you will.
And I actually think like the situation for both players is ideal for each other. Kasparas, I think, just to kind of piggyback on what you're saying, for all the games I did end up watching over summer, and in particular this tournament he was just in, he does seem to get flustered And so, if all of a sudden someone presses him and immediately, if he commits a turnover, he's almost immediately going to foul. That happened at almost a
Like
half a
Curbelo.
dozen times, I feel like. um, so, what that kind of tells me is that it's a young player. He's still a little emotional. I think having a guy like Kylan Boswell, who himself, like you said, he's entering his third year of college basketball. He's played at a high level at the University of Arizona. He can we can count on Kylan to take care of the ball, at least and especially in the beginning of the season when we're going up against a gauntlet of an out of conference schedule. And that's the type of schedule that can really, I feel like, work on the confidence levels of a new kid who's in a new country playing with new teammates for the very first time. I think kind of like what Jason here mentioned. I agree with all the KJ hype, but I got to be honest. I think Boswell is going under the radar and will have a breakout year. And if he does, I just think that raises the ceiling for this Illini team even more. And talking about how each helps each other out, having Kasparas and Will Riley and Hummerkaus here takes, I think, a lot of the pressure off of that spotlight that Kylan could have. The idea of the hometown kid coming home. Everyone, if he was the main guy that we brought in this offseason, there would be a lot of pressure on that kid. And yeah, despite him entering his third season in college basketball, he's still only 19 years old. And so, it'd be one of those where, again, they balance each other out. Having a guy who can score, who can, share playmaking duties. We're talking about how, he does commit turnovers, but Kasparas absolutely, in my opinion, has point guard skills. And so to have two guys in the backcourt, both of who can play the one, which is, again, hilarious because last year we didn't have a single point guard, and now we got two, in our starting backcourt. I think the way Brad Underwood has built this roster, uh, it worked out great for both Kylan and Kasparas.
Yeah, I think they could definitely be synergistic. I think Kylan
Ooh,
struggled a
nice
lot.
word.
Yeah, yeah. I
Nice.
think Kylan struggled a lot with playing with Caleb Love, high usage player. I think that will be the big adjustment for both of them, because, like you said, Kasparas has point guard skills, but he's got to learn how to play with really good pieces. I think, and I think that will be the big thing. I mean, it will obviously benefit him, hitting the roll man like a Merez Johnson or Tomislava Visic, Kerry Booth off the bench, a really good roll guy, as in roll to the rim guy. I
Right.
think, but on the flip side of that, playing with a lot of good players can be tough because, role identification is huge. You got to have set roles. And I think sometimes it might even be good to bring Kasparas off the bench, just so you can let Kylan do his thing, especially at the beginning of the season. I wouldn't be surprised if that happened as much as we hyped up Kasparas. I mean, Curbelo came off the bench, and I hate to keep kind of bringing up that comparison because they are different players, but I think there are a good amount of similarities. But I think the synergy will be interesting to see because I don't want Kasparas to become a high usage guy like
Yeah.
Caleb Love. I don't think they're similar players, but I think there's definitely that adjustment period that gets overlooked at times. And Kasparas playing with Kylan Boswell, with Trey White, with Ty Rogers, Ben Humrickhouse, all legit, legit pieces. So that's the one what if for this team. Will it all fit together? I think on paper it does, but will it? That's TBD.
Yeah. By the way, if you're tuned in for the first time on YouTube, help us out. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. It costs you guys nothing. I think before I started recording, we're at 954. So close to hitting that 1,000 magical mark that, you know, YouTube wants you to hit before they pay you any attention. And it helps us out, sending us out to other Illini fans and into their algorithms. Jason also follows up and says, and think about it, at Arizona with Love hogging the ball, Boswell couldn't be himself. This team is the deepest 1 through 11 the Illini have had in a very long time. Yeah, Love is a very hard player to play next to, in particular if you are a point guard. And I agree with your second point too. Being so incredibly deep 1 through 11, and these are the type of thoughts I have now in the off season. Like, as much as every offseason, everybody says that our teams are deep. And oh my gosh, we have 10 guys we can play. We can go 11 deep. But ultimately, when November rolls around, when December rolls around, there's eight, maybe every now and then a 9-man rotation that the coaching staff, goes to, which makes sense. Like, ultimately, even if you have 10 or 11 really good basketball players, but you still want to have your 8 or 9 best basketball players play the most minutes. So I guess my question to you, Alex, is of the perceived 10, 11, quality players that we have, which one do you think might be in for a smaller role than we might be projecting them out to be, or they might be thinking that they're going to be having?
Hmm. That's a good question. That's a good question. I think I think the easy answer would be Ty Rodgers. I think he's getting a little bit
Really?
overlooked in terms of what he can do, but I think Will Riley is the guy that might not have as big a role as a lot of people think. 5-star guy. I'm sure a lot of people, and himself included, are expecting a pretty big role, but I think the guy might have a pretty tough adjustment period, with his physicality and just the guys that are ahead of him, especially at his position, because the guy's going to play the 3 or the 4, right?
Yeah.
But you got Hummerkaus there. I mean, fifth year guy essentially.
Hmm.
You got Ty Rodgers there. You got Trey White there. Both are legit. This is their third year. They're grown men. Those guys are going to play. So where does Will Riley fit into all that? I know that he's going to have to. Whether they put Ty in the backcourt, Trey in the backcourt, but I think Will Riley will. It'll be tough to fit him in. I mean, where is he going to fit in? That's my whole question. Is he going to start? Is he going to be the first off the bench? Is he going to be like a backup 3, 4? Um, that's my question.
It's funny, you the first two names that you say are Ty Rodgers and Will Riley, and like, I just assumed those guys were locked in to the first first 7 or 8. Like, I wouldn't even thought of using, like, I was thinking of guys like Kerry Booth,
Oh, I agree.
who,
Gary Booth, yeah, he's definitely
you
going
know
to have a limited role for sure.
yeah, I mean, just when you talk about all the size that we have now up front, now Vicic is back, or it's on campus, sorry. Morez Johnson, everyone hypes up. Of course, we're all excited to see him, and hopefully, Brad Underwood's going to have a problem in the sense where Morez, could be outplaying a Vicic by the time Big Ten season rolls around, and so you're talking about two very solid centers. Then you have Hummerkaus, at the 4, and so then you're essentially trying to squeeze in some time for a guy like Kerry Booth, who obviously is talented, former 4-star player, but one of my best friends is a Notre Dame fan, and he says Kerry is very raw, and so I kind of wonder, with the way this team is made up, we have so much young players that Kerry might be the one guy who going in thinks he's going to play 15 to 20 minutes, but and may end up playing like 5.
I mean, would he probably take the Dane Danger role? That's the question. But then you have Vicic likely starting,
Yeah.
and then behind that, is the Dane Danger role, and you got to split that between Merez and Carey, and then maybe slot Carey down at the 4, where you got Hummerkaus starting likely, but then you got Will Riley, you got Trey White who could possibly play there. Um, that's why the coaching staff makes the money that they do, so they can figure this all out and put the best guys out there. But it's a lot of quote unquote talent, and we haven't even mentioned Dre Gibbs Lawhorn in all this.
Right.
Um, like, how does he fit into all this as a secondary ball handler off the bench, likely? But he's got the defensive prowess too. He knows the system. He knows Coach Underwood. I think that means something, especially with all these newcomers, and you only have 2 guys that are coming back. Um, And I think Dre knows that, hey, like I got a role available, which is probably why you saw in that video with Fletch how competitive this group is, because I think they all know that, you know, in terms of their role, there's a guy breathing down their neck trying to take it from them.
Yeah.
Obviously in a respectful way, but I think that's why you see this group being super competitive, because
Yeah.
these guys breathing down their neck for their position.
And that's what any coaching staff wants, just to breed competition. Competition is what's going to elevate this team ultimately. And you're completely right with DGL too. On Locked On Illini, I think it was yesterday's episode. Was my first segment was talking about Dre Gibbs Longhorn and talking about how important he could be like on this team, not just from a scoring point aspect, especially off the bench. He might be one of your main guys that you're looking to come in with, close to double figures every game. But with the amount of adversity that kid went through last year, with all the drama with, whether it's family members tweeting off the court. And, let's be honest, if we polled Illini fans at the end of the year on which guys that we thought would be returning next year, I think the amount of people thinking Dre would return would be in single digits. But he stuck around, and he's a guy who, when you watch those social media posts, he was super into it, celebrating with the team. Just really into that atmosphere and the culture. And what I talked about on yesterday's episode was there's a lot of new guys coming in onto the Illini next year who, as we were just kind of talking about, may not get the minutes that they want, may not be able to, maybe frustrated or whatnot. But you know who that guy was last year? It was DGL.
It was DGL. Yep.
He was that guy last year. So he could almost be looked upon as like in something like, again, it's hilarious when you think about the story of the fuss around him last year, but he could be one of the key leadership roles on this team because he's, one of two guys who's going to carry over the culture. And he's one of those guys who, hopefully I'm really rooting for him to have a successful year this year, because then he's kind of proof that, hey, you may not be playing much one year, but you're getting better. The staff cares about you. And look, they're going to eventually put you in a position where you're going to, help yourself and help the team.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you just want more proof that the staff is really good at development.
Yeah.
And for that to happen, you need guys to stay. Obviously, the 1-year guys are impressive. The Marcus Demas, the Matthew Myers, Alfonso Plummer, etc. But you want to see a guy's growth too, so you can sell that. A flip side to kind of the Brandon Pajimski thing, where he didn't play. I think a good kind of counterattack to that is, hey, he basically redshirted at Illinois for 1 year.
Yeah.
Right. So that could be sold as hey, he redshirted here. He played behind Trent Frazier, who's a 5th-year guy, played behind Alfonso Plummer, another great guy, DeMonte Williams, 5-year player, etc. Right. So having guys that you can prove that you've developed, goes a huge way, especially in the age of the transfer portal, which Underwood seems to be heavily prioritizing.
Thriving. Alex, you got your first question ever on Illinicast. Jason says, "Hey, Alex, I've been listening to Sonny for a while. Thank you, Jason. Appreciate that. But if you would predict the starting 5, who you got?" The $8 million question. I think that's how much Brad gets paid.
You're putting me on the spot here. You got to go Kylan.
Yeah, for sure.
That's one. That's the easy one.
I think there's 2 easy ones.
I think there's 2. I think there's 3. I think the easy ones for me are Kylan Boswell, Ty Rogers. There's no way he doesn't start. There's no way.
I don't know if he's the easy one. I think he's starting. Well, okay, no, let's hear the rest of your line.
Okay. Wait, no. I think there's 4. On that note, I think there's 4 easy ones. I think the easy ones that everyone's got are Kylan Boswell, Ben Hammerkaus. Is that one of your easy ones?
Yeah. I think those.
Yeah, and Thomas Savavicic. I think those 3 are universally picked as starters. I think there's no way Ty Rogers doesn't start. I mean, he's the junior. He's the returning guy. I don't think he would have come back if he was going to be coming off the bench after starting last year. So he has to start.
I I
You
want to agree with
disagree?
you. No,
You
I
disagree?
don't know. Like for me, it's I think there's a 100% chance that Kylan Boswell and Hummerkaus are starting opening night. There's like a 90% chance that Ivisic is starting opening night. I'm giving 10% just out of respect for Morez Johnson. The way if he plays the way he did, overseas in that one turn, the Team USA under 18s, who knows? He may give Ivisic a run for his money. I doubt it, but I'll leave open that 10%. The last two spots are just it's difficult.
It's a toss-up.
It really is a
It's a
toss up. Like
toss-up.
for me, it makes sense to put Ty Rogers in the starting lineup because otherwise, the counter to that is you're going to have both Morez Johnson and Ty Rogers on your second team. And that's going to really disrupt any offensive flow that you have.
Spacing.
You're talking about two non scorers, really, guys who get their points, in the paint and through hustle and whatnot. So, in that sense, it makes sense to separate the two. But I think Jason mentioned it earlier. I just don't know if you get a guy like Will Riley to commit to you, our highest rated player in a very, very long time, without some sort of wink, wink, hey, don't worry, you're going to be starting. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
that's
and again,
true,
we've been talking about Kasparas. Of course, Kasparas is
right?
just the other guy who
We got all
everyone
the
is raving about. Not even Illinois shows now. All these national shows, are talking about Kasparas and again putting him in like all Big Ten teams. And I'm just like, okay, guys, I like him too, but please.
Yeah, I agree. I think okay, for the last spot, right? So we
Wait, by the
got
way, while Alex is explaining, Jason, let's hear your starting five. I'm curious to hear
that's a
what
good
you
call.
guys think too.
But I think okay, we got let's say we got four spots taken, right? Because there's Kylan, there is Ben Hammerkaus,
Hmm.
there is Tomislav Ivisic / Morez Johnson, right? So that's three, and Ty Rogers,
Okay.
right? So that fifth spot, the guys that I think are um, competing for that basically is Kasparas, Will Riley, Trey White, and
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's those three.
And Trey White's another guy who, if you talk to insiders, like they say Trey White is one of the like he's been killing it over summer. Now again, that's a lot of hyperbole, a lot you hear that during the offseason that so and so is doing a great job. But Trey White is I feel like a guy who the fans are sleeping on, but the coaching staff and the insiders and the people in the know are actually higher on than the fan base. All right, so Jason does give us his starting lineup: Boswell, KJ, Rogers, Ben, and Big T. So he pretty much agrees with you, Alex.
Yep. Yep. So that's the tough part. I mean, then you would have to bring Will Riley off the bench. I mean, like you said, I don't know if you get the guy if you say, hey, you're probably going to come off the bench. But I think it's the most reasonable option to say Kasparas Jakucionis or Trey White are going to take that second spot because, it just, you need a grown body. You need a
Yeah.
grown man's body to start. But I think the good thing is that you're going to be tested early, right?
Definitely.
So you're going to know exactly who you are by the time Big Ten play rolls around. Obviously the Duke game is later in the year, but you're going to be playing Arkansas, you're playing Alabama, you're playing Tennessee, Missouri. I know we blew them out of the water last year, but they should be a lot better. They got an improved roster. Dennis Gates is probably coaching for his job this year after going with the season that he had last year. I think that's going to be a tougher game. Do I think they'll beat Illinois? Absolutely not. But you got a lot of tests early on. So I think you're going to know once Big Ten play starts, hey, these are the guys. And by Christmas, we should know the starting lineup that's set. But I think it's subject to change. I think you might see some things where a guy's starting and they might take their bumps early on. And then that's what leads them to have the starting roster that they do come 2025.
which again is all the credit to Underwood, Antigua, Anderson, Alexander, like all those guys. Like they've built such a deep team that you're exactly right. It's if one guy may not be necessarily ready for the moment, well, you know what? Then we can give more minutes to a guy like Trey White, who's obviously played 2 seasons already, of college basketball, more of a veteran presence. Like you'd expect less mistakes. A guy who's not really, I think, going to shy away from some of the bigger games. But again, you're talking about 11 guys, which I think we're ultimately going to bring down to 8, maybe 9. Who those 9 guys are, I don't know. But it's just funny because even the 10th and 11th guy who's going to be left out, could arguably have been a starter when Underwood first got here at Illinois. And that's just all the credit to Underwood and like that talent level that he just continues to keep raising here in Champaign.
What a great problem to have, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's like, oh, who should I start? KJ or Will Riley? Really?
Yeah.
Like 2 of
Two
the top
possible
20
draft
players
picks.
in the country?
Right.
Jason says, Sonny, reason I say that I agree you got to split Morez and Rogers up. Yeah. Riley will be 6th man and Lawhorn and Trey White in the next and Morez. Yeah. I mean, basketball wise, that 100% makes sense, in a basketball sense. But in this day and age, the way the college basketball world works now, it's not about just basketball anymore. It's about NIL. It's about promises possibly being made and keeping people happy because they might be leaving the following year. So I agree with you. I think Will Riley, the Will Riley and the Kasparas, like that's going to be very interesting to watch because of course, there's a world out there where both of them start. But do you really want to start 3 freshmen? I know Visic is 21, but still, technically, he's going to be a freshman on next year's team. And you want to start 3 freshmen against Alabama next year? I don't think so. I don't think you want to start 3 freshmen, against Arkansas and teams of that ilk. So again, it's nice. It's a nice problem to have. We're lucky to have all this talent that Brad just continues to be bringing in. And speaking of Alex, there's another guy who just got crystal balled to coming to Champaign. You want to talk a little bit about him?
Yeah, I mean, the word has gotten out about Spencer Arns, 6'8" forward, who recently just transferred to Sunrise Christian Academy in Kansas. Check out armchairillini.com in a bit. We'll be having some breakdown of what the big guy looks like. But 6'8" forward, played in the FIBA that Mraz Johnson and Jeremiah Fears, former Illini commit Jeremiah Fears, did play in. And actually did pretty well. Averaged 10 points, 6 rebounds. For reference, Mraz Johnson averaged 8 points and 9 rebounds. Obviously, Mraz Johnson was on a pretty stacked team. So Spencer Arns was starting, playing a good amount of minutes. Played against Team USA too, had 13 points, 3 rebounds. Solid shooter. Right now, he's a 3-star on 24/7 Sports, I believe. But, doing some digging on him, he had a pretty big injury, I think a shoulder injury, a year ago in April, which prevented him from playing summer 2023. And obviously, the summer is the biggest time for prep recruits to get their name out,
Yeah.
get big offers, and he's really done a good job after coming back from that shoulder injury. So that's why he's kind of flown under the radar and is still a 3-star prospect. But like I said, this is a guy that averaged 10 points and 6 rebounds in FIBA play. We've had our young guys playing in there, averaging about the same, if not a little less than what Spencer Arns is averaging. So to see a crystal ball put in for a guy like that, a guy that is 6'8" and can shoot, I think he shot 36.4% during this time in the FIBA. And you talk about losing a guy like Ben Humrickhouse this year, the guy that's running out of eligibility. I think it's a guy that can fill that role in seamlessly. Obviously, there's going to be Kerry Booth, hopefully, if he stays, and other players taking on, whether you talk about the transfer portal. But I think it makes sense to, spot in a young guy like Spencer Arns to possibly replace Ben Hummerkaus, and a guy that you can develop, long term to be that four man.
I think that's the key. That last statement that you said. I did a little profile on Aaron's a couple days ago on the other channel, and what I ultimately talked about was, yeah, 3 star. We're almost spoiled now, right? Like
A
Spencer
three
would be the
star
type of
only?
guy. Yeah, exactly. A couple years ago, he would be one of the main focal points of our recruiting classes, and now, you see Twitter and you read a couple message boards, and people are like, he's only ranked 118 or something like that. It's we've almost become condescending about it, but the fact that they brought him in almost immediately tells me that Brad and the staff really like him, and they want to essentially lock him down immediately. And big picture wise, it makes sense. When you think about when you're building a team now in this day and age, the way college athletics work is with the NIL, like you really want to go out and you want to be able to have the assets to go after like 3, 4 guys and, you know, pay a pretty penny for. But then you also need to build a team around those guys who may be willing to, not accept as much, but you like their game. And Aaron's is one of those guys who I think fits completely into Underwood's new offensive style that we kind of got a glimpse of last year. 6'8", I've seen 6'9". He's a playmaker. He can make good decisions. Like I can see him play anywhere from 3 to 5. Depending on the lineup that you put in. But he needs time. I don't think he would get much time next his freshman year. I think he'd definitely be one of the reserves, but you need those guys. You need those guys who are willing to be like the Jake Davises that we have on next season's team. Now, I think Jake Davis will barely play, whereas I think, Spencer would play a little bit more. But again, you need some of those guys who aren't necessarily going to cost you 6 figures, just so you can say that, for either the blue chip prospects, of which Illinois is involved with essentially every single one now, thanks to Underwood and Antigua and Anderson and Alexander all forming the recruiting Avengers that they've become. But you need some guys on the side just to supplement that roster, and I think that's kind of why Spencer makes sense to me.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, in this world, I think the COVID year being done, I think that changes a lot for recruiting. I don't think you'll see kind of the dependence on the portal. Um, um, thanks, Kirkland. I appreciate you, man. But basically, I think it's gonna switch it up in terms of the COVID year running out. I think you're gonna see kind of a return to prep recruiting that you haven't seen in the last couple of years with Underwood. And I think that a guy like Spencer Arns, if we do get him and if he does plan to stay long term, is someone that you need. We took Jason Jaxtis, similar player, but you need multiple bites at the apple in terms of developmental pieces. And I think, like you said, he's got positional versatility. He can play the 3, 4, 5, and he has the skill set. So why not take the guy, have a guy in your back pocket that's kind of brewing, so to speak. Um,
Working with Fletch.
Working with Fletch, and a guy that's bought into that, like all aboard.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a good play. I mean, class of 2025. Right now, we don't have any commits,
Right.
especially after Jeremiah Fears opened up his recruitment, reclassified into 2024. Um, so I think it's a good start. I mean, we'll see if it comes out to play. But I do think that you'll see a change in the prep recruiting strategy in the next couple of years with the COVID year coming to an end.
Definitely. Jason says the best part of Underwood is he doesn't have one set of offense he runs. He goes off of his skill set players he has and adapts, unlike a lot of the other coaches. Yeah, definitely. I've said this on every show I've ever been on. The one thing I love about Brad Underwood is he is not afraid to change. And I'm not even talking about like on a yearly basis. If something's not working, he's going to figure something out and he'll change the next game. And we're very lucky. There's a lot of coaches out there who are stubborn and not willing to make the adjustments, who you may be a little bit too confident and cocky in their own abilities. And,
Thomas.
yeah, I mean, that's who I was thinking about as well. Brad doesn't have that. Brad does not have an ego. Brad simply wants to win. He got that monkey off his back last year, making it making it past the Sweet 16. And I think it's going to be the same thing moving forward. Like, he's just not going to stop.
Yeah, I think, like you said, that adaptability has been. Someone just said he didn't adjust against UConn. I mean, I don't think anything could
Yeah.
adjust against UConn. But
UConn
I,
was on a different level.
but
I mean, that's like, you can only adjust, but you can't adjust against the best coach in the entire country, who also happens to have a roster of the best players in the entire country.
with multiple pros.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
There's a big difference. Underwood is building himself to that level, but he's clearly not there yet.
and I think the good thing about, I mean, the silver lining in that whole 30-0 run, and ending the season that way, I think it pissed Underwood off. I mean, despite making an Elite Eight, I think going out that way against a team like UConn, who was just obviously, they were going to beat us, but being that much of a gap away, I think it really ticked him off. And I think there is a silver lining to it. And despite the great season that we had, it left the sour taste in his mouth. And Brad's always done a really good job of having that chip on his shoulder and going at anything that tries to prove him wrong. So in a sense, I think, this is my take, that we'll be thankful that 30-0 run happened, because I do think it ticked our head coach off, and I
Yeah.
think that will benefit us moving forward.
I think he actually talked about that in one of the off-season, media sessions. And again, I don't know verbatim what he said, but the gist was, he knew the Illini were better than that team on the court that particular day. Not better than UConn, but better than the Illini group that showed up on that court that day. But he's like, I saw up close what it takes to win a national championship. And since then, all of a sudden, we've got Kasparas coming to town. We've got Will Riley coming to town. We're in the, we're inviting top 5 prospects to campus for the official visit. Like, Brad sees it. Like, he knows that you can run the best offense in the world, but if they're filled with, B players, well, a good offense run by A plus players is still going to beat that.
You need
So
pros.
Brad, what was that?
You need pros.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. And
yeah.
that's what, again, right now we've got 2 projected to go in the first round next year between Will Riley and, Kasparas. So it's like, by the way, I keep going back and forth between Kasparas and Kasparas, so that down the road, when I find out which one it is, I can say, well, yeah, I mean, I wasn't
I've been saying
completely
it
wrong.
right. Yeah, I've been saying it right the whole time.
All right. Jason says, everyone thinks I'm crazy, but we will win a natty in the next 3 years, especially with Orlando back. I wouldn't say crazy. 3 years is, I don't know. I mean, that's pretty aggressive. I love it. I love that optimism. I love that enthusiasm. If you said 5 years, well, I don't think I'd ever be confident saying Illinois is going to win a natty. But I guess I would rephrase it and say, I think I've talked about this on this show. I've talked about this on Lockdown Illini. I think the 2025 team, especially if either KJ or Will Riley, I don't expect both to stay, but if one of them stays, and this group of young players that we have on this team has another year of maturation, I think next year's team can absolutely be a national championship contender. This year, not so much, but saying that out loud, Jason, I guess I do kind of agree with you. I don't think they're going to win it, but I think we're going to be in that conversation.
I think this year has that potential to be a roller coaster. I think we're going to have our lumps, and there's a possibility that this team kind of disappoints in the regular season, especially with the gauntlet schedule that we got. And then I can see, those teams like Michigan a couple years ago, where they were like, I think 19-14, they barely made it in. Next thing you know, they're in the Sweet 16.
Yeah.
I think there's potential for that team, especially even looking like last year with FAU. They were about to lose in the first round. They were a broken end of the buzzer or end of regulation play away from losing in the first round against Memphis. Next thing you know, they're in the Final Four. So I think there's that kind of potential where we may disappoint in the middle of the season, but once we hit that March, I think there's potential for this team to maybe hit a stride. And I think 2025, like you said, all eyes are on that, given what we have on this roster.
Yeah, and you nailed it. Like that's why I always consistently bring up this really tough out of conference schedule, because I think right now, bringing in all these blue chip prospects and the summer of KJ, like a lot of expectations are going to be very, very high. And the fact that we're going up against some of the best teams in the entire country, if all of a sudden, we don't have a great out of conference schedule, like I'm afraid of the fan base, like all of a sudden, becoming a little deflated with their enthusiasm. And I guess I'm here for the few of you who watch me, just trying to say like, hey, relax, wait until January rolls around. Brad Underwood, gets to figure out what his lineup is. He can figure out, who his 8, 9 best guys are. We're trying to figure it out here in August, on August 2nd, but by then he'll have, 15 games to figure it out himself. And that's when you let the boys roll, because that's when, again, the talent is there. I think we have the coaching, and then we just see what happens. Tulip thinks we're Elite 8 again this upcoming year. He said that on Field of the 68. I think Underwood will have this team playing the best ball end of the year. I mean, Mike knows a lot more about basketball than I do, so his opinion's worth 10 times more than mine. I don't think we're Elite 8. I think we're, Sweet 16, which, again, I'll take. I like it. So, I don't know, Alex, what do you think? What's the ceiling on this team?
Yeah, I mean, I think the ceiling is obviously getting to that Elite Eight, Sweet 16. I think we can. But I do think that there is a lower floor than people expect,
Definitely.
given the amount of new pieces. Because I mentioned this a lot. UCLA had a lot of really good transfers last year,
Yep.
and they were terrible.
Yep.
So I'm not saying, I think there's a difference when you compare Kasparas, Jakucionis, Tomislava Visic to Burke, the long name, the guy that's at Nebraska, um, Mara, I think that's his last name. Those guys were, if you look at their film, super skinny. Bodies needed a lot of catch up. UCLA don't typically play freshmen too. So I think there were some confounding factors in that. But at the same time, hey, what if Kasparas isn't all that we think? What if he has a difficult time adjusting to America and to U.S. ball? Despite how good they are, like Tomislav Visic, he just got here. That's a really big adjustment. And I think there's still a lot of uncertainty. You know, I think Kylan Boswell is going to be dang good. I think Ty Rogers is going to be dang good. I think Ben Hummerkaus is going to be really, really good. But those two international guys, there's a lot on their shoulders. And I think there's a lot to ask, and we really just don't know how they'll project.
All right, Alex. I think we're going to have to kind of wrap it up now on my side. You want to let the folks know what's up at Armchair Illini right now?
Yeah, yeah. Appreciate you kind of letting me tell everyone about this, but
Of
we got a
course.
big amount of plans coming on for football season coming up. It's crazy to think that it's right around the corner. Content wise, you know how we do. We'll have a lot, but we got a lot of big things coming up. That we're going to be on showing to everyone in the next couple weeks. So be on the tune out for that. Keep tuning into the Illinicast. Keep tuning into Lockdown Illini. Sonny, you're killing it on there, and I think you're doing a heck of a job on both channels and the other shows of the Big Ten show. You're
Appreciate you, Alex.
absolutely killing it. So armchairillini.com will have content for you, but in terms of us, we'll have a lot more things coming right before the season starts. And we hope to be more involved on the campus of Illinois, so be on the tune out for that. But yeah, appreciate you having me on, man. This was a lot of fun.
Of course, no problem at all. yeah, on your guys' way out, if you can hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, we'd really appreciate it. We're trying to grow this channel, try to get it to 1,000. We're so close. If we can get it to by the time the football season starts, that would be amazing. Some of you know I do daily content about the Illini on Locked On Illini. I think I have the link in the description here. So if you want me to, I'm talking essentially 30 minutes every single day about what's going on in the Illini world. Hit me up on that channel as well. Subscribe on that channel as well. That one's also available on podcast if you need something to listen to on your commute to work. But otherwise, on the written side, you're not going to find anything better than Armchair Illini. Alex and Kirkland and the boys are doing a fantastic job. We're going to be coming on a lot more often here on Illinicast, especially with the season coming on, nearing up. We'll be doing pre-games, and we want to go live on post games as soon as these games end. So definitely hit that notification bar button somewhere here, and we'll see you in a couple of days for our next episode. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it. Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.